we were talking about self-image. That's the whole month focus of self-image. And where that starts is our relationship with God, that who he is and how he sees us. So knowing that this God, this omnipotent, omniscient God, all knowing, all powerful, the creator of this world, knowing how much he loves us is what I think builds us. Like we think if God, who is all powerful and all knowing, the creator can love me, then I should be able to love myself. That's a good place to start, is understanding who he is. So you might have heard me talking about Pastor Brian Cluth. He's in our group, our Thriving Singles community, and he has provided some documents for us. And I just put it in our group chat. What he did is he listed about, I don't know, some of them have 3 to 10 descriptions of Christ, and they're all just alphabetical from A to Z. So we just kind of talked about some of our favorites. And if you want to pick any of your favorites, you're welcome to. And David picked the shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. And I picked yesterday, today, and forever. That's the one that keeps ringing for me, is that he is unchangeable, that his love is without condition. So I have to keep reminding myself of that, because he has made promises to me that have not yet been fulfilled. And maybe they have been, and maybe there's just an adjustment in the plan. But I do believe that his promises are, he's not going to I don't think he changes his mind as much as I do, for sure. I wonder, Celeste, if there's any of those that you like, any of those. I mean, sure, you probably like all of them, but
yeah, we love them all, don't we?
That stand out to you.
You know, it's interesting. The one that I was looking for, that I like to refer to when it comes to self-image and self-confidence in Christ, is actually not listed. So
Oh,
can I be like rogue and come and like kind of put mine out there?
yes, you can. I did that too on
Okay.
some of these. Yeah.
Okay, great. So the one that I always think of is where he calls himself the great I am. And I think it kind of shows like an affirmation, I am. And if you know anything about affirmations and how you can say, I am a child of God, I am
Oh,
loved, I
you
am.
know what? I see it. I actually
Oh,
see
where
it.
are you?
It's
Oh,
excellent.
it is. It's under I am. I was thinking
Yeah.
the great I am. Yay. Okay, cool. So, yeah, so that's the one. I think it's so simple because it kind of encompasses the rest of all of these, because he's going to say, I am an advocate. I am Jesus. I am a master. Like, and the power behind that affirmation, the positive thought and the positive just truth that's delivered in a factual manner is just powerful. And so it helps me as I strive to, love myself more, to think about positive factual facts I can say about myself, and just kind of institute that in my life. I am a child of God, I am lovable, like whatever it is, you can put it in that positive affirmation stance. And so that's the one that always sticks out to me, because that's the one I always refer to.
Oh, that's such a good one.
Well, what I normally do, well, there's a couple of ways you can go about doing this. First of all, I just want to point out that it's really important that when you do an I am statement, when you do an affirmation that's positive, that it is factual. Sometimes people get caught up in doing like, I am, this is always my example because I can't sing at all. But if I were to sit here and say, I am the next American Idol, yeah, that's not true, right? Like you can't lie to yourself. It's going to be, it'll counter, yeah, it'll, whatever. I can't think of the word. It won't be good.
Yeah.
But one thing is a good way to come about figuring out what you need to say to yourself, because you can say a whole bunch of I am statements, but there's certain ones that you really need to focus on that'll help you feel better about yourself. And the way to find those is to list what you currently, how you currently see yourself. And usually the way you currently see yourself, there's a lot of negatives.
Yeah.
So you take that negative, let's say, for me, one that I'm still currently trying to overcome is I am unlovable. Because of things I've gone through in my life, I kind of feel that, am I a lovable person? So I kind of have that message. So you take the negative message and you transpose it, so I have like, I am unlovable on this side, and on this side, I think I am lovable and I'm worthy of love, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm worthy and I am. And so that's the best way to find what it is you need to work on, because everyone's going to be different. Everyone's negative thoughts are different. So everyone's I am statements are going to be different. But the way to find the ones is to find what negative thoughts you're already saying to yourself and then just swap them around.
So good.
A couple of months after that happened, I wrote this, and I write note cards and put them in my scriptures. And I came across this shortly after I had this realization about my divine nature. And I wrote this in May of 2010. Since resolving the anxiety issue, guided by the Lord, my mind and heart has been led to consider spiritual and temporal things that I never before considered, including the blessings from God of a divine nature, which as a result gives me the ability to connect with my Savior in a way that I had always wondered about. And what struck me about this was 13 years ago, I had nearly the same thing happen to me, and how fragile that is to lose that connection.
Yeah.
And so when I found that, I put it on the back of that particular affirmation card, and just to remind me, and I wrote this note as a reminder to me that I can forget the deep feelings of my divine nature if I don't nourish them.
Yeah.
So.
Rich, you have just provided, I just made a list of 3 things tips that I took from you. This is something I want to also in all of our calls to have people thinking of, just some action steps. What are some things that you can do to solidify these things and to have it be a way of living, or have new habits or new transformation, new changes that you can make? And you just mentioned 3 of them that I love. First of all, and this is what I wrote down, but it's not exactly what you said, which is to pray and find out, ask God, how does he see you? He sees you as a child, his child. There's different ways, things we can do to find out God's view of us. And then you also said, your I am statements after you pray. That's so perfect. I do the I am statements, but it might be when I'm in a hurry and running out the door, or first thing in the morning when I'm not woken up quite enough yet. But doing it right after you pray, because I think that also keeps the spirit open to and revelation from God to speak to you, that you are still in the spirit of prayer and you're speaking to yourself now, these truths, these words. And then another thing you said, you have these little cards, but you didn't exactly say this, but this is what I wrote down, is to write little notes to myself, and to find them, put them in places where I will find them. In days when I feel like on top of the world and I have the confidence and all the faith in the world that God is there and he is answering me and he will bless me, or those moments when I get the revelation or the promises, and I'm sure and unwavering in my faith, I will write myself little notes. I'm going to start doing that, David. I'm going to write myself little notes on index cards and put them in my scriptures and put them in my journal, or put it whatever all around the house.
I don't know. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh yeah. Is that
See
what you
little,
do? Oh, you put them in your scriptures? Are there little
I
sticky
put
notes?
them in my scriptures, and sometimes they're in the front, sometimes they're in their back. A lot of times I try and put them on the page.
Oh, cool.
That I've got my kids fighting over who gets my scriptures when I die.
I bet.
Oh my gosh, how
I
funny.
bet. So are they notes? Are they just like notes to yourself to remind you?
They are notes to myself, insights that I have had. I've been working trying to transcribe them. It's a big it's a big thing, but that's a big project.
Yeah.
So every now and then I bring it out. I want to go back to that one thing that you talked about, looking at creation and the divine nature there.
Yeah.
So after I had this revelation or understanding of my divine nature and how God sees me, and it was like one of those things that a light bulb went on, and it was like just instant understanding of it. I over the next several days, I went to, in my prayers, I included, help me to understand, what do I do with this now? What does this mean? How do I use this information? What does it mean in my life now? And and I then right after that, I started coming across things that talked about looking around and looking at all the divine creations, all the creations, and that God's divine nature and energy and power is through everything that he's created.
Yeah.
And then, and that caused me to start looking at things differently there. And then it went to, okay, now look at other people. Look at people that you know, and you begin to see their divine nature, and said, they are just as divine as you are. And so that you don't get along with right now, or my former wife, who, I'm still trying to deal with grief and stuff. She has a divine nature. And so it's just made me look at things differently and look at my life differently. And it's been quite a journey the last few months.
Yeah.
Good. It's been a good journey though.
Yeah.
It has.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I love it. So you just have to rub off on us. You have to just give us all your tips and
Right.
help us. So I think we just all help each other, right? We all have moments that we're feeling a little more on top of the world than other times. God's glory with her story. And that was maybe my favorite. The woman went back to the town and said to the people, "Come see a man who told me everything I ever did." Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. So he still loved her, like I mentioned at the very beginning. He still loved her without condition. Anyway, so those are a couple of good examples from the scriptures and even from our own lives. We all have situations. I honestly, you guys, I have loved your insights and the things that you shared. It's so good to be able to focus on who God is and how he sees us and how we see ourselves. So it's that relationship between God and what he wants from us too. He wants us to accept his love. Really, that's all. I mean, he does ask us to love him. If you love me, keep my commandments. That's as simple as that. And then that he also says that we love him because he first loved us. And that's, anyway, that relationship with God and then also with ourselves is really key to every success in our life.
Can I just say one thing about the woman at the well? Just one little simple thing.
Whatever you have to say.
I think it's really intriguing that yes, she was living in sin and she'd had a really sinful life. But yeah, like you said, he saw her for who she is and for who she could become. And he loved her nonetheless. And what I thought was really interesting about that story, what I've always thought about it, is she was the first person that he revealed who he was to. And it's interesting that he chose a woman who was probably scorned and looked at very lowly from society, to reveal that to first and foremost. And I think it shows us that no matter what we've experienced in life, because sometimes our life path is not full of roses and we experience a lot of bad things. And maybe because of our past experiences, we make, not so good choices in the present, but he was able to see beyond all of that and just who she was and love her and embrace her for who she is. So when to kind of tie this into the I am statement, sometimes I think it's important to look back on your child, because a lot of our struggles, I do believe, come from childhood and maybe messages we had then that we held on to and they're just not true about ourselves. Maybe stop and just like Christ looked at that woman in the well and saw who she was inside, look back on the child you were and the experiences you were going through and love that child despite what they may have thought about themselves then. And I think there's a lot of healing in doing that. So anyway, I want to throw that out there.
Thank you for adding that too. that's another reason to work for having that self-image or that self-love, is that we can actually accept other people's love for us too. We can have a stronger connection with people when we feel like when we know we're worthy, right? Worthy of that love. So
Yeah.
anyway, awesome. That, yeah, it does. It takes us off into another tangent. But I love it. I love that topic too. Well, thanks, you guys. That was actually a good
thanks.
conversation. I really appreciated you guys being here.
Thank
And like I was telling David, we never know how many people are going to show up. There could
Yeah.
be 3 or there could be 20. Celeste is a hostess of a group called LDS Flameless Fireside Podcast. David,
For singles.
Singles.
But yeah,
I have
very
been
good.
attending.
LDS Flameless Fireside Podcast. Have you heard of it, David?
Yes, I have been attending there.
Oh, good. That's so good.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why I wanted to make sure, because yeah, they're much different than mine, are very small and much more humble.
Well, it's been a couple years, so
But,
it's a slow progression.
Audience for sure. But you also give notice, and it's consistent, and it's every Wednesday, and people know
Yeah.
what to expect. That's the
That's
difference.
true.
I just jumped on here and said, "Come join me if you want."
Yeah.
So I appreciate you jumping in. Nice to meet you. Get to know you guys.
Good to be with you.
Thanks for having me, Sherry. I appreciated it. It was fun chatting with you. Good to meet you, David.
Nice to meet you too, Celeste.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, you guys have a fabulous rest of your Sabbath.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You too.
Alrighty. Bye-bye, y'all.
Bye.